If you've been around the Genshin fanbase recently, I'm sure you've heard of the unanimous praise it's been getting for its most tragic and brutal story quest yet. However, unlike most people, I seem to have deferred opinions from the rest of the fanbase, including my friends. And for a while now, I've been wanting to share my thoughts on Natlan's story and why I found it to be disappointing, if not outright bad in some cases. Are my feelings justified? Am I just bad at analyzing media? There is only one path to go down to answer that question. Join me in this video where I explore what is titled to be the most dark ARCHON quest ever, Natlan's second ARCHON quest, Acts 3 and 4, Beyond Smoke and Mirrors, and the Rainbow Destined for Ruin. The introduction to the story quest is nothing special. After a small time skip, we check up on the state of Natlan, and it seems pretty good, honestly. With a ton of forces all around the areas of Natlan, they can quickly and effectively tackle any monster attack with ease. Now that was explained to us, we meet up with Kachina, who tells us her plan of signing up for the war efforts, which goes to show Kachina's development since the prior arc. No longer afraid or lacking confidence in her power, she wishes to take part in the battle as much as she can, trusting in the strength of Natlan and her own. Considering Zilonin, Zilonin doesn't play a massive part in the story, I'll skip to the part of who does. However, I will take time out of my day to say Zilonin has a nice introduction, which easily allows us to get to know her personality without telling us anything, which is what good introductions are, but doesn't go too far into it nor develops her during the story quest. Maybe that's why Trial Chronicles exist, who knows, but we don't really develop her character or our understanding, so that was sort of sad considering she was pretty much the banner unit for the entire update, yet we know nothing about her. In the main story, of course, not Trial Chronicles. Anyways, undoubtedly the character who gets all the attention, especially for the first few sections, is Citlali, and her introduction is great in my opinion. Hearing about her at first is setting up an image of her character and even appearance. However, since we actually know what Citlali design is, this doesn't really work out, but in any other non-gacha related stories, this is actually a great introduction for a character. Anyways, we're told she's pretty busy and that she's isolated and that she's incredibly odd, and getting her attention will be hard, especially with the possibility she might not even show up. Citlali's entrance is awkward and embarrassing, and I'm all for it, but a problem that I have with many ARCHON quests are that some characters who we've bonded with and got to know, or even ones that we bonded with before, get sidelined for different characters after their story ends. It's kinda really sad. No, it's not kinda. It's really sad to see characters as great as Kachina Mulani get sidelined, not Kanich, for Citlali and Ororon to get center stage. No matter how much I like the two characters, just sidelining other characters for them to get a chance to shine just feels like it's not one interconnected story, and instead multiple different sections of stories that don't really have a correlation with each other. But anyways, this part of the story is quite fun. It's all about the mystery of Ororon and why he would conspire with the Fatui, which keeps most of the story entertaining, considering that Citlali says with all her heart that Ororon is quite a good kid, and this mystery, or at least the answer to this mystery, is being dangled in front of us, which drives the story for me at least.
What does she mean by deep and confusing? As far as elderly shamans go, I'd say that I'm already pretty easy to talk to. Is there any other old hag who's as fluent in the language of the youth as me?
While I do love almost every moment Citlali is in, I do have a problem with this scene, as we don't really know the reason why Citlali's thoughts were shared as well. Because Citlali mentions that she's never encountered that problem in that spell specifically before. Thus, for this all just to happen out of nowhere to further Citlali's character just feels lazy. Anyways, something that I noticed while playing through the story is that underneath the comedic and awkward moments, Citlali is closer to other characters in terms of worries than I first thought, or specifically themes, especially with Kachina. The spoken dialogue spoken by Citlali here is mostly about her character and how she is trying to be someone who really isn't herself, or at least in terms of perception. She wonders about the thoughts of others and how she needs to be trendy to fit in and have conversation with others. And as I said in my deep dive in Kachina's character in my last review, she thinks that she needs to fit an invisible standard that doesn't really exist enough in the first place, which is similar to what Citlali wonders, constantly trying to be someone who isn't herself to try to get any sort of friend.
Greetings, traveler from afar.
I like the direction the Fatui members are going in general, and how humanizing it is to not only see the knave be more caring and considerate, but also Capitano and his more righteous and honorable code. Signora and Scaramouche, while they did have tragic backstories, they were overall just felt like really flat characters. Oh look, they have a tragic past, now they're villains. But Capitano and the knave don't really follow the Saritsa's orders to a T. They have their own wants and needs, which makes them feel human. This scene is also, at first, sets up a morally gray area for the plan that Mavwika has in place, which I was very excited about. Seeing morally gray areas in stories such as Attack on Titan was amazing, so I was really excited to see what they had in store, along with the fact that Paimon wasn't a part of the conversation. We've had her on our side for so long, and had this information as well, allow us to have the choice for, allows us to seem like we have multiple paths, which in my opinion raise stakes and tension. After a gameplay section of us beating the hell out of Fatui members, we finally get the best duo in the entire story of the entire questline, and if anyone disagrees, fuck you, fight me. With Ororon, an important thing to note is his speech, and how he talks compared to our first meeting with him and Capitano. At the current moment, he speaks like a child, someone who lacks prior information and doesn't understand fully of how the world works. Calling Aether, or your MC or whatever you chose, Gramps because he looks around Citlali age, which she corrects immediately as being wrong. Citlali later mentions how Ororon does have a brain, but he doesn't use it. And comparing to how he talked with us before, it's a massive difference. With Capitano, he's much more direct and more intelligent. He knows the dangers of what he's doing and his actions, but he does it anyways because it's for Granny. The person Ororon pretends to be in front of Citlali is that of a child, a naive and innocent person who doesn't have their screws on correctly. However, he's far more smart and self-sacrificial. More on that later, however. Something to note is that Ororon keeps something in between these two sides, and that is his selflessness. Both sides of his characters mention the safety of Citlali being the main priority of why he conspired with the Fatui, showing that his kindness is a shared trait, a true part of himself.
Well, great view, right? I love coming here by myself.
I've pointed this out in my first review of Natlan's story quest, sorry for it being so long, and now it's happened twice. But now with Ororon and Citlali, and since Citlali is the epicenter of the scene, I'll focus on her. I'll talk about how much I loved Ororon and my disappointment later. In Natlan, there is a repeated idea of identity, if not stated outright. For one, we have Kachina, who thinks her identity as a warrior has to be someone who's brave, fearless, and righteous to a fault. Someone who wouldn't admit their fear and stand proud and say that she can survive on her own. And Citlali is someone who is seen as inhuman, a legend, however is far more human than others give her credit for. She gets drunk, shows moments of vulnerability, rambles on about Ororon and gets annoyed by his stubbornness, and even admits to rolling around on the floor in her pajamas. In Kachina's section of the story, we see self-imposed expectations of fulfilling an identity that was placed upon her by her own twisted viewpoint. While Kachina is someone who tackles problems of expectation upon her by herself, Citlali is someone who had an identity she didn't fit at all given to her, and about just how futile it is for her to try change other people's perspective on herself. I mean, that could be the very reason why Citlali and Kachina look the way they do. When hearing Granny, you think of someone who's old, someone who looks like they lived through millions of years, but with Citlali, you get a younger looking, bright character, and with Kachina you get a friendly looking child as one of the best warriors Natlan has to offer. The first time could have been a coincidence, but now there are 3 occasions in which identity plays a major role in a character's arc, and I don't think that's a coincidence.
Oh, it's you two.
This isn't much of a complaint as much as it is a disappointment for me. We've had this very unique crossroad where we could go with two separate plans that could save the nation, and in my opinion, I very much felt like something was lost here. The ability to explore the moral gray area of war. What if Mavwika's plan had some sort of sacrifice or some sort of physical risk? What if for the first time we fully didn't agree with this immoral plan to save Natlan? Even with the sacrifice, we have to decide which side to take, which path to consider. Having such an option, in my opinion, would explore the colorful world instead of living in a purely black and white land where Capitano is clearly in the wrong and Mavwika, our hero, is right and selfless. I feel as if they were committed to the idea of showing the idea of war, they should have explored far more complicated and interesting aspects than just they died, then they died. The reason I think Genshin should have a more complex and morally gray story is because of characters like Farina and Navia, who explored parts of the justice system that were more complex than anything else we explored earlier in the earlier regions, along with Farina exploring the human strength along with their weakness when isolated and alone. Those ideas being human could have been explored in the war region with amazing complexity, moral gray areas, what makes a warrior, how war affects others, etc., yet they fail to make anything interesting. Only simple, black and gray perspectives on war itself. Mavwika is a selfless and heroic person who doesn't want to kill anyone, seeing souls the captain wants to use to make a net for the ley lines as cruel, and that they were just the lives of past descendants.
I heard everyone wanted me to be the savior.
Ororon is undoubtedly my favorite aspect of Natlan's 5.1 story quest, but it is also the most disappointing I've been in at Genshin's story. To see why my disappointment is so high for Ororon's section, I'll first break it down. Throughout Ororon's section of the story, there has been a repeated motif of selflessness related to Ororon and the mystery of why he would help a supposed villain like Capitano, and when we finally get the answer, it is one still shrouded in mystery. What are the past events Citlali is talking about? What ritual is she pointing to? What did Ororon really go through when he was young? That all gets answered in Citlali's Drunken Stew. Citlali explains that Ororon's parents had abandoned him, that his soul was unique, and that he wasn't fully complete. His soul was lacking the other half, and this allowed him to be a vessel for the lost and wandering souls that exited the ley lines. To return the lost spirits back to the ley lines and quelling the damaged and reverting its horrific state that it was in. All the members of the tribe agreed to the ritual, even if it came to the cost of Ororon's young life. Even Citlali at the time didn't intervene. She didn't even fight back, she just went along with the plan and watched from the sidelines as a young Ororon had to wrestle with the entire fate of his entire clan. If not Natlan in its entirety on his small and weak shoulders. The ceremony failed, and Ororon barely escaped with his life. This made Ororon believe in the toxic idea that this key part of him, this incomplete soul, is for a reason that has to end in his sacrifice. It has to be he who dies while everyone else stays alive, lives on, and grows up to be the people they want to be. Ororon had supposedly made peace with his eventual death. He had thought that he wanted this, that he needed to do it, that it was his obligation.
Someone said I'm close to death. Is it because of that noise just now? The piercing cry came from underground when I activated the device.
And yet, even with this supposed acceptance of his eventual demise, when comforted with a situation where all he needs to do is give up, to fall down into the pitch black void known as death, he hesitates. He flashes back to the people that he truly cares about, confronts the message that he seemed to have missed due to his obsession with being a hero. He is cared for by two elderly people, given the options of what he wishes to be in life, and with Citlali, well...
Take it from me. The happiest people are the ones who do their own thing. So do what you want, Ororon. No matter what anyone else has to say.
This simple yet introspective line from Citlali is what breaks him out of the lie he thought of in his entire life. At the time, he could never fully understand it, never realize what Citlali meant with that line, but now at death's door, as he feels his body shivering from its touch, he releases. Even though he's never found planting vegetables fun, he didn't have enough time to find his calling, his purpose. Is his body broken? Is his soul incomplete? Has he failed to save Natlan? Yes. But he hadn't had time to do anything he wants. His body might be broken. It might be a miracle that he was born at all in the first place. And so he chooses to cherish his life, chooses to live, to reach out and touch the light, pleading that he wishes to live. He pulls himself out from the unbeatable situation. What a profound and mostable, relatable message. The reason I find characters like Kachina and Ororon as the best written Genshin characters in the entire game is that they have hidden layers. They have complexities, real-world implications. While I heavily dislike putting my private life into these videos, I will talk about this resonating with me. I found myself similar to Ororon. At least, I don't find anything worth doing in life since I failed being like others. Like how Ororon failed in his ceremony, comparing himself to thousands of heroes from Natlan, and just like him, I found a calling that pulled me out of the similar situation as Ororon was in, writing. And with Kachina, no matter who you are, I'm sure you've compared yourself to others, felt like your way of doing things were wrong because everyone else around you are just better. The two 4-star characters of Natlan has proved themselves to be surprisingly great written, with themes that we can all feel closely related to, and that's where my problem lies. The lack of attention to Ororon and his cutscene. As we all know, Genshin has 2 types of cutscenes, the Dragon Ball Sparking Zero type cutscenes and not the good ones, and the god tier Feast for the Eyes cutscenes like Mavuika vs Capitano. And it seems like they saved those 3 god-tier cutscenes for each important ARCHON missions, and all 3 were spent on the latter half of the story, and Ororon is left with a chunky animated cutscene. As I explained, his story is extremely thematic, with immensely philosophical ideas at the center of the story, yet they gave all the attention and cutscenes to fighting with little to no story section of the plot, all style and sadly no substance. It pains me that a great plot like Ororon was skipped in favor of being cool. This is where I make some enemies. For my extremely hot take, I'll say that the whole war it's not like a war, more like a battle. Skirmish? Battle, going to say battle. The whole battle against the Abyss was one of the most disappointing aspects of Genshin I have yet to play. Worse than the prison section, even more disappointing than Sumeru, and of course more disappointing than the lack of melon. I'm joking. Anyways, my earlier feelings of this section of the story still holds true. Even if I am joking currently, my main problem comes down to one reason. There is no point of being afraid. There is no reason to be scared. There is no tension. As we know, our pullable characters, the ones with actual character designs and not generic NPC clothing, will make it out. They will live and survive without issues. And yes, I know, before you go type down furiously in the comments, I hear you. Yes, many people did die in the battle. However, people like Vichama, who I forgot played a role in the story to be honest, and Chuyu. However, here is my reasoning for my disappointment and utter distaste for this section. Number 1, did we know any of them? While this doesn't apply to Vichama and Chuyu, the rest of the casualties in the war are NPCs that I don't even talk to when coming to Natlan and never plan to. And I'm sure that's the situation for all Genshin players. Yes, it's tragic that a group of Saurians are waiting for their owner to return, yet can never have that wish to be fulfilled, even though they don't really seem bothered. Ripping back that surface level tragic aspects, what do their deaths mean? Were they on screen? Did they matter? This is the equivalent of just trying to make me feel bad for all the soldiers that died in Marineford or just any type of war arc in general. It's sad, but beyond that, it's just a costume. It's just death and nothing more. No character to associate with, no personality to be attached to, and no thematic implements to understand.
I get it now. So, no nagging from me this time. You keep forging ahead, sis.
This is probably the hottest take on my channel yet. Hotter than when I said Dragon Ball Legends had a good gacha system. And that is, I never cared for Chuyu, nor did I care about her death. Whoa, okay, before you take any of your pitchforks out and start being an angry mob, I have to ask you a question. What did we truly know about Chuyu? That she was Chaska's sister, that she cared about her secretly, she didn't admit her feelings to Chaska, even though it was really obvious and there's no way Chaska could not pick up on it unless she's just brain dead, and she's a doctor. My point is that Chuyu was just a simple trope by the time of her death. She wasn't anything more than just pretty much Chaska's tsundere sister by the time she died, which brings me to my main complaint and disappointment of this section of the story. It's timing. It feels like a finale to an ARCHON quest, like a version 3.0 update. However, it isn't, and that's not a praise. If the story ended with Ororon and Citlali, then it would be fine. Ending off with a philosophical statement like that would have been great, but we didn't. Instead, we went into a battle where I knew our main heroes wouldn't die. Capitano would be fine because he is needed for a future character, same with Mavuika, Citlali, Chaska, Ororon, etc. And even the past characters, since Hoyo never lets us play dead characters. Chuyu's death definitely surprised me, but it didn't make me care for her death, because this reveals to us that, surprise, surprise, Chaska was the final hero. It was obvious from the beginning. Wow, the only flower feather clan member we've met and have a design for is the final hero from that clan? Wow, shocker. I guess the main problem is that the further I dive into the final battle, the less it makes sense to me and the less emotion I invoke from it. Saurians die, tragic. People die, tragic. Chuyu dies, tragic. But that's all. Really good war arcs like Marineford actually make us care, not because tons of nameless soldiers die and they hand out tragic backstories or whatever, but because we have that one singular death, most likely. That one death that means something, that shows us that, oh, anyone could have died at any moment. For Marineford, it was Ace. Not only that, but Oda was great at establishing Ace's character mid-arc, which Chuyu did not get. For Endgame, it was Tony Stark. For AOT, we had other people like Sasha, Levi Squad, and Eren. And for Jujutsu Kaisen, we have Nanami, Gojo, and even Nobara. See what I mean? Chuyu could have been a great character, however, she didn't have enough development or more of a distinct personality. She was just attached to Chaska, and that never really made me care. What if we learned more about Chuyu? What about her life as a doctor, her home life, her actual wants and needs? What if she became a doctor due to her selfish spirit? Or what if she became a doctor because of Chaska's condition and that she never truly wanted to be a doctor, much like Ororon? I get they tried to make me care for Chuyu and Chaska's with the sneaking scene where they find out and sneak past the Fatui, but that was one scene, and once again it was related to her just caring for Chaska. So in the end, no death really mattered for me, in my eyes, other than pushing the plot forward or giving us cool moments or just exploring the lore. The battle didn't really accomplish anything. It hands the people of Natlan forever revives, we get to see the bad sky or whatever it's called, I have no idea what that is, someone please tell me, and they push back the abyss, and Mavuika announces to the people that they will finish off the abyss with their help. That was really underwhelming to me. Even though the Traveler says this is war, there wasn't ever a danger of war. So, in the end, I really liked the Natlan 5.1 story. However, its ending was lackluster, and the speech at the end from Mavuika didn't hit hard. It didn't make me feel anything. Relief, terror, maybe more exhaustion that I have to deal with the abyss one more time after what felt like the final battle, with no emotional stakes to rise up. Maybe I'm being too negative. Maybe I don't understand what Chuyu was. But in the end, I feel like she was just a character to establish tension rather than anything else, and that, in my opinion, is bad narrative choices. While I did like the story quest, while the quest is filled with lore and characterization and more, I have to note how disappointing the ending was and just how bad of a narrative choice that Chuyu was and just how disappointing it is. This story quest was great, but it was the most disappointed I've been, considering Farina and Navia have set up both amazing examples. The 5.1 story just seems to fall down and not be able to capitalize on the running steam that they set up. While I am excited to see how the 5.3 story handles things, I do not like the endings and have a myriad of disappointment oozing from their choices. What are your thoughts on the story? Do you agree with my takes? Do you disagree? Tell me in the comments below. I have been FFG Mania, and this has been my thoughts on and review for the 5.1 Genshin Archon quest.